Welcome back to our LinkedIn live session. With me, our Chief Privacy Officer, Mr. Elliot Lowen. Welcome, Elliot.
Thank you. Thank you, Dama.
Thank you. Today, we will talk about what comes after synthetic fraud. Few weeks ago, we talked about synthetic fraud and its implication to business. So today we'll learn what comes after synthetic fraud. So let me take this opportunity to ask a couple of questions to our Chief Privacy Officer, Mr. Elliot Lowen. So just to recap, Elliot, so what is synthetic fraud?
That's a good question. First of all, data safeguard has a real interest in any kind of fraud that involves personal identifiable information or PII. And with our cognizable computing engine, or we like to call it CCE, we're able to handle a number of different techniques from redaction to masking to money laundering and synthetic fraud. So the whole basis and platform of the company is based on the idea of helping companies combat synthetic fraud. So what is synthetic fraud? It's a type of identity theft which has really come out of the woodwork in the last 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
where people take real and fake information to create a new identity that is often used to commit fraud. So, for example, let's say you have a baby,
Mhm.
you register the baby with a social security number. Somehow a crook gets hold of that social security number and combines it with other information not related to the baby to create a whole new identity. That new identity is made real by a combination of the social security numbers, applying for credit, doing various things. But it's a completely fake identity. So it's not a real person, but it's using real personal identifiable information to create a synthetic ID.
Thank you. So how is synthetic fraud different from other types of identity theft?
It's a really good question because identity theft has been around for a long time. People impersonating other people, claiming credits, educational credits, business credits. Traditionally, identity theft involves stealing the identity of a real person. Synthetic fraud, on the other hand, involves creating a whole new identity that does not belong to any real person. This makes synthetic fraud more difficult to detect and prevent. And that's what we found with our existing credit unions, TransUnion, Experian, that they have a real hard time when confronted with a synthetic fraud case to identify and prevent it.
Great insight. So what are the risks of synthetic fraud to business?
Well, they're huge.
Okay.
Um, Tremendous possibility of financial losses in the billions.
Mm.
Synthetic fraudsters can use synthetic identities to open bank accounts, apply for loans, make unauthorized purchases. They can curate and grow lines of credit because no one knows that they're in existence until those lines of credit offer significant balances. They can draw down those entire balances and then literally disappear. So financial losses is a big one. Regulatory compliance risk for banks and regulated industries are, they're required to comply with any of the risks associated with identity risk and fraud protection. And synthetic fraud, as a new way of handling fraud, is very difficult for business to comply with
Mm.
these existing regulations. And then finally, a company that's damaged by synthetic fraud can really have an impact on its business reputation and brand trust if that information becomes public.
Great, thank you. So I heard about next generation of fraud threats. that the business need to be prepared for. So, what are the some of the next generation fraud threats to the enterprises, and how the enterprises should be prepared for?
Yeah. So really, what's happened is uh, we categorize these all as synthetic fraud, but it's an evolving fraud that has taken on a number of different capabilities, and business need to be prepared for it. And that's why we're talking about what comes after this more general notion of synthetic fraud. The first one is deep fake fraud. Deep
Okay.
fake fraud can be used to create very realistic fake videos and audio recordings. Some cases using AI, other cases using recorded voices and then splicing them together. Deepfake fraudsters use this technology to impersonate a real person and commit fraud in a variety of different ways. Another one is using the tools of artificial intelligence. We use in our base products AI to detect fraud, but it can be used the other way around, where AI can be used to create fraud.
Mhm.
And AI, what we're discovering with the advent of regenerative AI and various chat capabilities, they develop new fraud schemes. For example, AI could be used to create a synthetic identity, develop target phishing attacks, or even automate the execution of those frauds. And then combine that with deep fake fraud. You might not know it's not a real person talking to you on
Yeah.
the other line, soliciting funds, soliciting donations, various things. Another one is taking advantage of the supercomputing power,
Yeah.
the same computing power that's used to mine blockchain for cryptocurrency, to create those amazing video games and so forth. Um, you look at that type of new computing power, it has the potential to react and process much faster than our traditional computers. So, quantum computers can be used to break encryption algorithms,
Yeah.
which would make it easier for fraudsters to steal sensitive information. So, let's say I get hold of your credit cards and your ATM using
Mhm.
quantum computing.
Yeah.
I might be able to hack and decrypt what your ATM password is. And then using that, it just helps me create and take advantage of your identity. And then finally, taking advantage of edge computing. Edge computing in today's world is a real danger because
Yeah.
we live in a world where cloud computing and very distributed computing, where data is processed and analyzed at the edge of computers, close to where it's generated. Now, edge computing can be used to commit fraud in a number of different ways, such as sniffing and interpreting and manipulating data at the network level before it reaches its core systems of record. And this is very dangerous. And we're seeing lots of occasions of this. For example,
Mhm.
we see this in membership fraud. So, a number of hotel chains like Marriott
Yeah.
has a huge membership census. And we're seeing that edge computing attempted to defraud and get hold of those memberships, and then using that membership as a basis of
Mhm.
identity theft. And then finally, to end with the whole identity, Internet of Everything, the IoT fraud. And what we're seeing is with the Internet of Things, we're seeing networks with physical devices that are connected to a network that are designed to collect and exchange data. This whole area is growing very rapidly and
Mhm.
is estimated to, there are billions of IoT devices connected to the internet. This growth of IoT will create new opportunities for fraudsters to attack and develop information about an individual. For example, a fraudster could hack a home communication system such as Google or
Yeah.
Alexa or Siri, and then start listening to steal data, control devices, and
Yeah.
using that launch a number of denial of service attacks, and also use that information in creating a synthetic ID.
Very scary. Right? So, how can business prepare for the next generation of fraud threats? Any insights you want to pass on to our audience?
Sure. What we're seeing is the creation since about 2017
Hmm.
of both global and country regulatory agencies like GDPR, California Privacy Act.
Hmm.
38 of the 50 states have a Privacy Act.
Yeah.
The other 12 are about to implement one. We're seeing DPDP in India
Yeah.
as a significant privacy regulating attack. And what those all those agencies do is tell businesses there has to be a change in culture, change in philosophy,
Right.
a move away from just holding and guarding data to realizing that there's fraudsters out there and your data is both necessarily to be protected, not just from those fraudsters, not that you own it, but it remains under the domain of the individual, the consumer who has provided that information. So we think businesses need to invest in solutions like what Data Safeguard offers
Yeah.
that can detect and prevent fraud across all channels and devices. For example, our ID Redact eliminates personal identifiable information at the source, and therefore it doesn't get proliferated through an organization or outside an organization. And
Right.
this has turned out to be a very powerful tool at stopping identity theft, or really any kind of theft, like synthetic theft, and the launching of denial of service IDs. Next thing is educating employees about
Yeah.
fraud threats. So many fraud threats seem innocent enough.
Right.
I have a package which we can't deliver to you. Please click on this site or call
Yeah.
this number for information. Is a common practice among fraudsters.
Hmm.
And by educating employees about these kinds of fraud attacks and fraud threats, uh, an enterprise can be both uh, understand and tailor specific roles and responsibilities in terms of the corporation, but also make their employees wise as consumers
Right.
and how to report this kind of uh, theft. Then really employ very strong security measures. Business need to implement strong password protection,
Yeah.
uh, uh, more than one ways of authenticating an individual. They need to really react and assess and reassess their use of firewalls, intrusion detection, and data encryption, especially with remote working. This has provided a huge opportunity for fraudsters to connect up and get information. And then finally, have a plan worked out with both compliance within the company, auditors, as well as other security forces to respond to any kind of fraud incident. They need that plan because once the fraud occurs, the quicker and effectively acting by the company makes all the difference in the world. They need to be able to scope and identify the incident, contain the damage, and prevent it from happening again.
Great. Thank you so much. Anything you want to pass on to business or something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
a yeah. Sure.
it's a good point just to so maybe editorialize a bit.
Yeah.
We're seeing new ways to authenticate people. Zero trust security is a great new security model, and it assumes no user or device can be trusted by default. And that's a good starting point in this era of synthetic fraud. both from a cultural point of view as well as a strong authentication and authorization and for users and devices, regardless of whether they work within
Right.
or outside the network. Take advantage of companies like Data Safeguard who use artificial intelligence to detect and prevent the loss of personal information. AI can be a great uh, solver and analyzer of large amounts of data to identify patterns and anomalies that may indicate fraud. So AI can be used to automate fraud detection as well as prevent the proliferation of personal identifiable information. And then, most importantly, collaborate with businesses and organizations. What we're seeing is a number of financial technology companies, banks, insurance company, brokerages, forming ad hoc committees to work and share information about fraud threats and develop best practices for fraud prevention. We're seeing that both provided by regulatory agencies like SEC and Federal Trade Commission, as well as organizations which are designed to protect individuals and data, such as the FBI, Secret Service, and so forth. Business can also collaborate with law enforcement proactively to help investigate and prosecute fraudsters. And then finally, companies like Data Safeguard offer a service to do a privacy investigative assessment, or PIA, which is a very good idea, even if you aren't sure where your company stands and you just want a quick external assessment on what you can do to beef up your fight against fraudsters. Doing a PIA can be a very important and valuable lesson.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Iliad. Pleasure talking to you and get your insights. It's always insightful conversation nice to have with you, whether in
It's fun
person in
doing these
California
conversations.
or on LinkedIn Live. Yeah. So, audience, if you heard about Iliad and about our company, Data Safeguard, so we are reshaping the future of data privacy, compliance, and synthetic fraud. We all are in a mission to eliminate regulatory fines, combat fraud losses like synthetic fraud, earlier talk about it, and prevent data breaches. And so that your consumer confidence will go up. And do you know what is the total addressable market? It is more than 1 trillion US dollar. We are an AI empowered SaaS company. We help organizations navigate data privacy, regulations, compliance, and of course, to prevent your synthetic fraud challenges. If you want to join us in redefining the data privacy trust in the digital world, you can join us as our partner, our customer, as well as you can invest in our company. Thank you so much, Iliad, for your time. And next week, we will come up with a different topic. Yeah. Till then, bye, take care, and safeguard your personal data. Thank you.
Thanks.